Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar titled From Demand to Delivery, Aligning Operations and Marketing for Growth in 2026, presented by OuterBox and hosted by Metal Forming Magazine. I'm Brad Coogan. I'm the editorial director here at Metal Forming at the Precision Metal Forming Association, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for today's session. Before we get started, just a few notes about today's meeting. It is being recorded for archiving, and that archived recorded event will be posted to our website within the next few days. We'll let you know via email when that recorded webinar is available for viewing online and sharing with others. Also, all of the participants in the meeting are in listen-only mode, which means that our speaker today and other listeners won't be able to hear any audio from your site during the program, but you do have the ability to communicate with us by submitting any questions or comments you have using that question box, which is located down in the bottom panel of your control screen. If you don't see that Q&A button, if you click on the More button, the Q&A button then should appear on the bottom of your Zoom screen. So then you'll simply type your question to us, and we'll address it as soon as we can. So now it's time to begin today's webinar. Manufacturers have kicked off 2026, many have with cautious optimism and a clear shift. All of this is according to OuterBox's 2026 Market Pulse survey, which shows that operational efficiency now outranks the importance of scaling marketing and adopting new technology. Companies are doubling down on what they can control: readiness, capacity, and delivery. So in today's session, we're going to hear how manufacturers can align their marketing with operational readiness and evolving buyer behavior by using digital trust signals to capture demand that they can then fulfill. So our speaker to cover that topic today is Josh Blankenship. Josh is the Director of Business Development for OuterBox. And so Josh, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brad, and thank you for everyone for taking some time out to with us this afternoon. Like Brad said, this is a really fun topic, and it's obviously very pertinent for a lot of what you guys are facing in your businesses here in 2026. You know, how to be strategic with your resources and precise so that the organization kind of can behave as one team. And we'll talk a lot about some of the different facets and levers of control that we see organizations using to get smarter and more organized, to basically drive the growth that's strategic that they're looking for. So go ahead and share my screen here. A little bit about OuterBox. So we've actually been around for an agency for 20 years. We're proud PMA members. I've been with the organization for going on 13 now. We're based out of Akron and out of Houston. We are a full service digital marketing and analytics agency that's getting more and more into AI development and AI visibility, which we'll touch on as well today. And the majority of our clients are somewhere in the industrial space. So they could be manufacturers, they could be OEMs, industrial service groups. So a majority of the tools and strategies we talk about are all predicated upon longer, more complicated technical buying cycles and the types of things that, you know, our clients are doing to focus on the right types of work that they can grow with, lifetime value of customers, and how can they use different systems to not only articulate that strategy externally, but then to be more organized internally as they work between sales, marketing, and operations. So the coverage that we have here is everything from SEO, GEO, which is about visibility and AI tools, to paid media, paid marketing, email marketing and automation, website design development, user experience, AI, chatbots, and agent development as well. And then analytics, which is really kind of the rock bed of the qualitative aspects on lead generation and strategic business growth, which will focus a majority of our tactics and strategies around today. And talking about what different groups are doing to leverage analytics as kind of the foundation for all the resource planning and guidance that they put into the business. So really why this is so important, and I think everybody here could probably nod along, is that we all work in organizations that are complex. And so there's natural checks and balances between the different goals that different departments bring to the table. And we have to be able to work as one unit to reduce friction and actually grow. And so sometimes that means strategically saying no to the right things. It also means being able to find out where you're misaligned potentially in the marketplace. and where are you finding opportunities that are coming in that constantly stress the organization or don't allow for maybe strategic pivots that you're trying to instill. And that could be emerging sectors, new capabilities, new markets that you're trying to enter, and maybe some of the kind of the residual, we've always done it this way, is kind of holding those teams back. So when we think about where misalignment happens, it's often between, the business being positioned to win in areas that you don't have marketing visibility. It's sales teams that are continuing to chase the wrong products, low margin work that potentially is in front of them, but doesn't actually fuel the growth for the organization. It also comes from buyers that go through these different departments. And maybe they have one experience online assessing your capabilities, but they have a totally different experience when they actually work with sales or get handed off eventually to account management or operations leads. One of the central points is really on bullet 4 is defining these things. I think most of the organizations that we work with haven't sat down collectively to define, what does a marketing qualified lead look like? What does a sales qualified lead look like? What does operations capacity planning look like that they want to, so that we can actually take those quality measures, distill them into a metric, and then track against different marketing strategies, sales strategies, and other things that kind of get alignment across department functions. So we'll talk about how that work can be done, and then how that growth can create strain instead of momentum if it's in the wrong area. So not all revenue is strategic revenue. So we'll look at that. And Brad mentioned this on the jump. We survey over 1,000 of our industrial clients in a market pulse survey, and 39% of the businesses said improving operational efficiency is their top priority in 2026. And that was over the 28% that said focused on scaling marketing and sales. But as we all know, they're all interconnected. So you really can't separate one over the other, and you certainly can't work on operational efficiencies being misaligned with sales and marketing. So the 5 pillars that we'll look at here are about the right demand. So how is it that you go out and find the demand that aligns with ops or the strategic vision for 2026 inside the organization in the marketplace? How do you deliver confidence to those users as they're doing their research and assessing your potential fit to help them? How is it that you actually capture those opportunities, whether it's phone calls, form submissions, chat bots, and other ways? How is it that you actually qualify these opportunities that come in? So that's where we'll get into the scoring metrics on what does good look like across these functions. And then how do you deliver customer continuity and really kind of take care of the clients that you already have and customers that you have for cross-sells, upsells, same-source sales growth inside of your organization. So first thing is finding the right demand. This is from a Gartner study. You guys, if y'all are in sales capacity, marketing, you've probably seen this statistic before. And we see this all the time. And I have some examples in here. And what it's telling you is that by the time you hear from a potential new customer, they're already over the halfway through their decision to purchase or work with your group. And that's because the customer owns the journey. They get to do their own research, get on your website, competitor's website. They get to use social, maybe ChatGPT or LLMs from an AI standpoint. They're going to Google certain things, watch videos, read reviews, and they're going to assess your ability to help them against whatever pain point they're trying to solve. If you do not meet that standard in their mind, for whatever reason, they often don't call to clarify with your organization. They just hit the backspace and go with someone else that met that perceived standard. So majority of the battle for new customers is won or lost before you even get to talk to them. So this is why analytics and understanding customer journeys and how it is that you generate opportunities as a business is so critical, because if you don't have that foundation, you don't know which levers to go pull on that are actually feeding the strategic growth that you're looking for. And I would argue, and we're continuing to see this start to emerge, that AI is making that even more challenging. That's empowering users even more so. And technical buyers, procurement agents, engineers love these types of tools in ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. And so them embracing this technology makes the standard and threshold even harder to be found and be relevant in this new emerging age. The challenge with that is that they own the customer journey and it's not linear. So you have to tie together an omni-channel experience. And so that what that means is you have to have a consistent presence across the specific industries, applications, capabilities that you're trying to bring to the market, so that there's cohesion as people ping pong between the different channels that they use in the research process. So for instance, they may start a chat with ChatGPT, and they're talking about an engineering challenge, maybe it's a capacity challenge, something in the business that's not working, or an RFP that they're working on, and they're starting to source and become acquainted with different technology, service capabilities, and other things. That may spark an idea that causes them to go Google something they'd learned there. They go Google, then they find your website. So they come to the website. From there, they read for a minute and then they leave. But maybe they do some more research and you show up with a paid ad in that search environment. And then maybe later they open up Facebook or LinkedIn and your brand is there again to stay top of mind and position yourself against, one of the core capabilities or strategic growth objectives that you have in 2026. Then maybe they read an article later and your banner ad is there as well. So you've kind of cut weaving this net so that you bring this consistency no matter what they choose to do. And the thing is that users can come into this cycle in any starting point. So they will start in random places, they'll do their own research, and it's really important that you're thinking through all these touch points. How is it that you're experienced? And then what are the places that you can engage digitally? So for a lot of our clients that spend money on trade shows, potentially direct mail, maybe catalogs and other things, one of the objectives is think about if you're compelling at all in any of these conversations, one of the first things someone's going to do is essentially Google you, get on the website. Maybe they scan a QR code. So you want to think about what are all the places that you spend money in strategy and what are some areas that you can bring in a digital touch point, because then you can cross over to some of these other channels and pick up and continue to nurture the messaging and the strategic framing that you're trying to push as a business. So people go through this and eventually convert. So your job is to kind of lay out where are all the places that we participate in the market. What are these goals that we have, whether it's diversification, maybe it's a strength that we're bringing, it's a new capability. And then think about what channels allow you to go into those markets with the timing and expectations that you have. So we'll send you this deck as an example, but these are really the big channel pillars that we see a lot of our clients investing in, and some of the different expectations that you can bring depending on what your strategy is. Your goal is not just traffic or clicks or not even just leads, because not all leads are created equal. So you will get different behaviors from these different channels. And so we've laid out here, some of the pros and cons or how you can start to think about these things. So for instance, if you're thinking about demographic targeting, maybe there's industries, job titles, certain accounts you're trying to break into. One of the great places you can go with that is LinkedIn as a social play. Now, the thing that's great for is reaching the right types of organizations that may align strategically with what ops is trying to do and where you're trying to grow. The downside is the timing's not always right. So you think about that's one of the hardest parts in marketing is the timing right? So if you're going for a high level kind of awareness play in key industries or organizations that you want to maybe onboard or introduce yourself to, you're going to be interrupting their day with a message, but you've got to play the longer game here about awareness and different messages that may resonate when someone's not directly in the market shopping or looking for, a new supplier, vendor, a partner. Think about video and display, how that's really good at explaining certain capabilities, being able to get your sales pitch in front of people. YouTube continues to grow. Video consumption continues to be one of the highest growth categories. Video is a great way to explain yourself and articulate what your mission is and what you're trying to do to help customers in the market. Low to medium there. You think about your offline presence. You go to certain events, Fab Tech, local associations, publications. That's great for credibility and relationship building. Low to medium timing, but that's where the crossover on, if you're compelling, what do you hope they do? You hope they open a social channel, open the website. How can you springboard another channel to market and work with those individuals based on that time? Think about directories, retargeting. That's when those ads that kind of follow you around stay top of mind. A lot of what happens in B2B and industrial buying is it's a team decision. So as you maybe have a great initial conversation or response from an individual, they're ultimately going to go influence their team. So how do you think about targeting a larger group and a team to stay consistent? And then you get down the funnel. You think about high intent, people that are actually Googling, searching, maybe even talking to AI specifically about projects that they're dealing with in that moment. Very high intent and can be great for capturing in the market activity. And there's ways to do that strategically against operational capacity or diversification goals that you may have. And then existing and past customers. This is often overlooked. People become, really predicated upon new logos and new clients coming into the business, but sometimes taking a look at your own customers, potentially underutilized cross sells, upsells, or relationship capacity that could be expanded there can be really high when active. So we've ranked some of the different strategies and different plays that you may have, some of the use case and the timing signals here. But what is growing, and this is from the Gartner study that just came out at the end of last year, 61% of B2B buyers prefer a rep-free buying experience. So self-service is becoming a higher and higher expectation from customers that want to ask questions, explore, and get information without being sold to yet. So in here, it's kind of how we think about building a marketing engine. So think about awareness plays, branding plays. We talked about LinkedIn, offline associations, webinars, higher level awareness. Then you think about a little lower down the funnel as intent and brand based. So people that are Googling, people that use Bing. Bing is a great channel for a lot of our industrial clients. It can be very cost effective. We actually drive a lot of really high quality RFQs from Bing users. You drive them to your website. Then we think about, well, what is that user experience like? How well does your website communicate quality? How well does it speak to the goals that you've got within the business? Whether it's, again, industries, applications, certifications, materials that you specialize in, certain project types that you want to drive. These are low consideration, or these are high consideration purchases. There's no impulse buy here. So then you got to think about, well, we spent all this money generating awareness. How do we nurture visibility with those users? When they leave the website, how do we remarket to them so that we show up consistently and drive them back to the website, ultimately producing hopefully a transaction or more likely a phone call or an RFQ form to the business. From there, this is one of the most under-leveraged pieces of data in most businesses, is what is the quality of the forms and phone calls that you generate, so that you can measure against those operation and business goals, not just high level, did we get RFQs? You and I both know that if we just get an RFQ, we don't understand if it's valuable or worth the cost and expense until we know who they were, what they were asking for, and how well that matches up against that criteria we talked a little bit about earlier. Then you take that data and feed it back into refining your marketing channels. This data is typically isolated and locked for most businesses. It lives in random CRM records. Pattern recognition is not run, and there's a tremendous amount of value left on the table there. AI is excellent at scaling qualitative analysis against leads like phone call transcripts and RFQs, and we'll explain that in a minute. Goal is to help run against all of that. So one thing that is changing is the introduction of LLMs and AI growth. So I'm sure a lot of you use ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI. If this was kind of bi-directional right now, I'd poll the room on just what you guys use and some of the use cases. But every time I do a different engagement, the hands go up higher and higher, and the use cases have gotten more sophisticated. It is still, though, important to put them into context. So it is not a zero-sum game. So all the growth in LLMs and the use of AI does not directly replace that of search engines. And it is still an emerging category. It's a profound emerging category, and it's absolutely worth paying attention to. And we'll talk about strategies here in a second for it. But it's still about a 10-to-1 ratio in monthly visits to LLMs or AI technology for chats versus search engines. So you're looking at about 80 billion to 7 billion. Every time I use LLM, that's a large language model. ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude are all large language models. So you can see just in context the size difference between the two. Search engines have shrunk a little bit in market share, and that's really kind of the first time that's occurred, down 1% year over year. In total visits, about 6% in unique users, and the LLMs have quintupled. 38% of all US desktops now essentially log a session on one of these AI platforms. So the first piece of guidance here when you're thinking about this emerging channel and positioning strategic, demand and sales marketing generation, the first thing is about benchmarking. So this is a screenshot of an example of one of our clients where we benchmark how much traffic are you receiving from LLMs at all. And you can see this kind of growth starting late 2024 in the growth. The navy blue is ChatGPT, and then you can see Perplexity and others showing up. So we're seeing more and more fractured channel sources coming from LLMs. ChatGPT is still number one, but they're getting more and more competitive competition from their peers. And this is a mixture of doing the right things from a positioning and content standpoint. And this is also a mixture of just more and more people coming through these channels. So this isn't all just strategic work. It's just also showing the adoption rate as well. The Similar Web, which reports kind of traffic dissemination, AI platforms generated over 1.1 billion referral visits. And that was in June of last year. That was up 350%. So if you haven't yet gotten your hands around how much traffic you're receiving and from which of these channels, that's an easy first place to start. So when you're doing your strategic planning, you can figure out how much these channels matter to you, if at all, in your current state. But that's traffic. And the focus of this talk is about alignment that goes deeper than just superficial KPIs. So it's about leads as well. And this is a screenshot. I'll get more into lead scoring in a minute. This is one of the platforms that we use, but this HubSpot, there's other tools out there. You may have some in your business that have attribution or could be configured to get attribution for where you're getting leads into the business from. And so this is from a client in the industrial space getting Copilot and ChatGPT leads, and they're actually scoring out well. So it's not just research and traffic and middle schoolers copywriting papers and no longer writing them. There's legitimate work being sourced and won out of these channels now. Microsoft reported that Copilot assisted journeys are 33% shorter than average. So we talked about that kind of crazy halo earlier of people ping-ponging this customer journey together. LLMs and AI are allowing for a lot more of that discovery to take place in a centralized location, and we're seeing shorter, more precise journeys come from these platforms. And there are ways to now track, just like you maybe have tracked visibility, say with keywords and other things in search engines over time, where you can now track prompts. So you can come up with a list of prompts and maybe how some of those key personas behave, the kinds of questions that they may be asking that you're uniquely positioned to solve. And you can track then performance and visibility against those kinds of longer form prompts over time. And that really can sit in that more strategic bucket. What do we hope to get calls for? What kind of certifications are under leveraged? Where do we have capacity or idle machine time? How do we focus those operational gaps or areas where they're primed for growth into prompt behavior that we know is important, and then benchmark our visibility so that we have a growth plan in those strategic pockets. The other thing is that search engines themselves have had to disrupt their own product to keep pace. So if you've done any amount of Googling recently, you've seen these AI overviews. And these AI overviews are kind of counterintuitive. Google is having to respond to disruption that's coming from AI platforms. And they're giving more and more answers directly on google.com. So you no longer have to click into a potential website to get certain things answered. The good news is, as long as Google doesn't start stamping metal, at some point they still have to connect with a provider of some services or equipment. But that journey does change. So here's an example of an automotive metal stamping manufacturer. You've got some paid ads at the top. You can see some of the different groups. And then you've got this AI overview. So what's wild is everything you see above the screen is actually, there's no organic listings. It's all paid real estate and AI overviews. That's worth noting because just at the top line here, want to kind of talk about the shifts that we're seeing that are impacting our clients and what they're feeling in certain areas given this change in technology. So that AI overview, what we're tracking here, and this is for our own website, the blue line are essentially searches that have one of those AI overviews present. So you can see about the end of Q1 last year, a large uptick in that feature being present across Google searches. So what that means is potentially your brand used to have visibility in some areas where users would click into your website to get further information. There's very likely a large percentage of those same searches where users no longer have to enter the site to get their questions answered. So that changes your ability to kind of hook in and communicate your value and your brand directly to users in some of those places. So for us, we actually maintained and grew visibility, but we got less clicks. And so for full transparency, this is our year on year. We had 16 million impressions, went up to 33 million impressions, meaning our website was visible within search engines, but our clicks dropped from 38,000 down to 27,000 in that time frame. So you can see how that pattern kind of separates visibility from clicks. So if you haven't seen that, or maybe your intuition's telling you that something feels like it's changed, maybe on some of your lead gen channels, that can be part of it. So our method for alignment on what the business wants to do, what ops wants to do in conjunction with sales and marketing, we have a method we call the Be Smart method. And so the Be Smart method is an acronym. So when you're looking at how that applies specifically to industrial and B2B, what we want to look at is like, where's the capacity? Where's the strategic growth for the business needing to occur? And then we will work, and you can take this same framework internally and work amongst yourselves. We take the Be Smart method as a marketing roadmap. And we say, okay, if we want to grow in EVs of some sort or some capacity within there, we want to take that vision and we want to permeate all of the different components that go into that work so that we can go out and try to attract it so we get the right kinds of leads to feed in the organization. So we may look at certain brands that are associated with that mission, that product type, that service offering, that end application. We may look at certain sizes, maybe large envelope or certain sizes is a differentiator that we're looking to fill. Materials are a really big one, not just top line materials, but specific grades and alloys. Look at applications, think about requirements and ratings, certifications, ISOs, other different components that you may have that are key differentiators or lend itself to growth in certain areas. And then type. So not just stamping, but maybe it's deep drawn. It's, certain elements that go more specifically to, again, that goal. So we take that and we start to think about then how do we go into the marketplace to attract based on those technical requirements that people will use. And so that really comes down to your website. So your sitemap has to reflect what you want to win. And there's a self-fulfilling prophecy here. So we worked with a fabricator that wanted to grow and sell more EV charging stations. They could fabricate, those stands, but they hadn't really done much of that work. They had one kind of organic opportunity that came in. They had changed up their shop floor just a little bit for capacity planning to build out and deliver on that project. But they're like, man, we want more. So you go to their website, and we don't talk about that as an application or an end market. There are certain, again, material types and other considerations that they wanted to speak to in that technical delivery. And so we go and publish it. And what you can find is that if you have growth goals, diversification goals, if you go talk about them on your website, even if you don't have a robust experience there yet, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because you will get calls for what you talk about online. And it goes back to that 57% of the journey. If someone's trying to qualify you against their own standard, but they don't read that you have the capabilities or experience in certain end markets and so forth, they're not going to call you just to ask. They're just going to hit the backspace and leave. So it goes both ways. You can talk about where you want to grow, even if you haven't grown there yet. And that is one of the things that can allow you to actually start driving more of the right opportunities to fit that goal. So step back and look at your sitemap. Use that Be Smart method. Do you talk about the sizes? Do you talk about the certifications that you hold? The material to an adequate depth? How robust are your certifications? Are they just barely mentioned on the About Us page? Are they in the footer, the header? Do you have content for them integrated throughout the site? So that's a really good place to kind of, what is our goal? Maybe there's a unique mission that we've got or area of growth. Can we vet it through that Be Smart attributes? And then can we take that audit when we list out all those different elements, and can we go look at our website? And then can we go apply that to other strategies and say, how well represented is this to someone from the outside that doesn't know us that can see this? So that's one of the keys. Search engines, AI, LLMs, they have a mutually beneficial relationship with you. If they're getting asked tough questions all day, especially growing technical questions, they have to give good answers. And so if you only have one or two pages that talk about everything you do, you're not as competitive as someone that offers up very specific expertise on different pages. So each URL becomes a piece of your real estate that can get indexed, can get sourced and returned. Really critical that you kind of take a look. And sometimes you'll find that the ops and growth goals are because you've got marketing and sales goals where you're not speaking to the level of expertise, or if at all, to the areas you want to see growth. Then when someone's looking at your website, they're trying to figure out your qualifications and they're getting a perception of your business. I've been in some beautiful shop floors where the website looks like a total train wreck. And it's a complete mismatch of how immaculate and clean, the shop floor is compared to how they look to the outside world. So buyers are taking longer to decide, again, kind of being truncated a little bit by AI, but they are researching more deeply and they're expecting more clear proof of value before engaging. And so this is an example of a website here where you can see the ISO certification, made in the USA. They've got the resources at the top, industries we serve, materials. They've got their different service and capabilities all at the top. So that Be Smart method is represented right across the top line. Call it Don't Make Me Think. So they can immediately find all the different places they need. This is a video banner that's running. It looks incredible, gives the right impression, allows someone to piece together these different elements that they're looking at or concerned about when potentially looking at a buyer. And so this goes back to the that example of that lead tracking customer journey software that we use. So this is a real inquiry that I think matches what we were hearing from a client. So they had deep inventory. This is more on, they're a distributor of steel plate on some kind of more exotic stainless steel alloys. So here's Bing coming through. So we basically built a separate campaign specifically around their inventory. And that's one of the mechanisms. If you're not having that conversation with your agency or internally, you've got to have a cadence in which this stuff is being communicated and regularly being revisited so we can move and shift dollars depending on where capacity or backlog is occurring. So we go after 347 steel plate here, stainless steel plate. In the priority campaign, they come in. So they land on that page. So go back to that Be Smart. You're not going to get calls for what you don't talk about. So we land them right on a 347 page. They immediately can confirm the dots. These people have at least the material I'm looking for. But that's normally not the full calculus that they're going through. So what is their very next click? Certifications. Well, let me go see how qualified these folks are, what kind of certifications they have. There may be a specific one they have to have for the project. So that's their very next click. If that click can't occur, they may just leave and we miss that whole journey and we don't even know. The very next thing they clicked on was in the industry served down to aerospace. And then they submitted a quote. So in their mind, they're like, I've got to have some 347 for some kind of aerospace application. It's got to have some certification requirement with it as well. So when they're beginning to source this, they're going material first. Yes, check. But do they even have the certifications as a non-starter? And have they ever worked in my field before? Because I don't want to be the first person, that they've ever worked with in aerospace. They check those dots, a part of that journey, submit the quote, comes through. We've redacted it, but you can see aviations in the company name and what they're looking for. So this is that customer journey that you've got to facilitate that's both strategically aligned with the org and then also leveraged by digital to mature it before you can actually get the opportunity and remain competitive. The other things you want to do here is make sure, if you haven't, looking at your website, like how easy are you to get in contact with? And, I've been a part of some really cool A/B tests and other experiments where we change the color of a button and it helps somebody drive more conversions. But it's really not that like people can't help but click on an orange button. Give people more credit than that. They're going through all of the things that we just saw on the previous slide on, are they certified? Do they have the inventory? Are they credible? Where are their locations? What's their experience look like? When they're ready to move forward, the onus is on them. You've got to earn that. It's about clarity and confidence. So do they have to kind of go down through the footer and find a random sales at email address that they have to open up Outlook and write you an email and a subject line and kind of just be like, hey, to whom it concerns, I hope you can help me with this project? Or is it streamlined where it's super easy to get in? It's obvious how to get in touch. The next steps are clear. We do a lot of that for alignment. So not only is there an RFQ button or a contact button, but then are you able to articulate what happens when they actually contact you, who you're going to hear from, how long is it going to take you to get back to them? Those are all really good signals that demystify that conversion point, and we see drive incremental opportunities into the business. One of the other things I'd recommend that you can start exploring are web assistants or chat bots on the website. So like I said earlier, I've been doing this for 13 years, mostly in this industrial sectors, and I've been anti-chatbot vast majority of my career. And that's because chatbots, historically, the automation was terrible. You couldn't trust them to answer technical questions. So it was a credibility risk if this thing's answering questions inaccurate to engineers, procurement professionals. Or the option was to man it. And so taking some of your most expensive team members' time to sit on a chatbot all day is also a really poor use of time. LLMs and AI have changed that. So these are really cool ways to start engaging your customers. We've built one. There's a lot on the market. They're highly trainable. They're empathetic. They're professional. You can come up with decision trees now where we can ask more qualifying questions to sort and weed out bad leads as well, or things that aren't a fit. People are more apt to engage with this type of technology than ever before. And then also you can track all the dialogue. And so that goes into what we'll get into in a minute about qualitative analysis on what the customers are looking for. You can mine these transcripts for really cool insights on what do people care about, what are they asking for, and use that to refine your marketing and position. So this goes to measuring what good actually looks like. So it's not just traffic growth. Some of my favorite case studies are actually, clients of ours where top line quote leads went down, but qualified opportunities went up that matched what ops was looking for, and they actually closed more and the business grew. So if you do not have a qualitative measure in place that is shared between sales, marketing, and ops, that is one of the first things to do. And it's not easy work. And you definitely have to have leadership helping kind of run those conversations so you don't inadvertently get too narrow and too risk adverse. I think that's one of the risks that can happen here. But the alignment on what can be measured and scored qualitatively is really important to be documented. I think any one of you, I could probably put a quote lead in front of you and you could give me an immediate reaction on, yeah, that looks viable and that looks like a good opportunity, or no, that's a waste of time. I can already tell. That intuition can be documented and how scaled, given today's technology and the other tools that we're starting to look at here. So this is a tool that we built that helps look at all the different leads that come in where you can score them good, bad, fair, and otherwise. And that can be done against a profile that you can write about what the quantity is, what they market. Are they mentioning certifications? Are there certain alloys? Are there capabilities that they're referencing? Things that align with what that aligned measure is. You can apply it, and then you can grade, leads, phone calls, and other things that you're generating. And it's so important to get that measure down because that measure changes from just top line form fills and things that we're trying to get at the top line, which normally makes marketing happy. Sales is just trying to hit their number. So they may be selling anything or they're selling the same stuff over and over that's not allowing you to evolve. And operations is saying, this is the kind of stuff, these are the good tells, industry application material, and so forth that would be great to fit our backlog, our capacity demand, and you can centralize that. So this is what it looks like for us. We build a very simple matrix. It's a 1 to 5 scale. For us, anything that's a 3 and above is going to be marketing qualified, and sales qualified score comes in afterwards to review. But this was jointly written between us and operations. So we've got better documentation behind the scenes, but we are looking at domain authority that in our world helps us understand how long a business has been around. Yours might be top line revenue of an organization that you're targeting that really fits that ideal customer profile. But when we get a lead coming in, we may look at industry fit and then request type. So if it's a great industry for us, but the request is really odd, it scores lower. Or if it's an odd industry, but a great request, it can score higher. And then you can see kind of how the matrix evolves from there. So coming up with a joint definition so you can score opportunities that come in beyond just top line quantity is critical so that you can then actually tie those back to the channels and investments you're making that are driving the highest opportunities. And that sometimes is the more expensive investments. And that's why that metric is empowering, because sometimes it's a counterintuitive place to spend more money where there's a higher cost per quote lead or higher cost per click or higher participation at certain conferences. But when you have that kind of back end metric, you're actually governing the business in a different position. One of the other things that we do a lot of, and you may have this in place, is call tracking. So when calls come in, we actually track all the calls. So when you think about, hey, this call may be recorded for quality assurance, if you have that in your business or you want that in your business, there are a lot of great tools out there that allow you to record phone quality. The reason that's important is still a lot of this work takes place over the phone. And so if you don't have line of sight into how it is that you generate phone calls and what's occurring in those phone calls, you're potentially missing attribution to over half to 2/3 of the value you're creating from the marketing and sales investments. We measure these, and then we run that same sentiment score against the transcripts so that we can understand how well do those calls align with our goals, how many of them are solicitations or current customers or people that are applicants that are applying for jobs here, so we can actually just get through the noise and get down to the real signals and tie them back to um, the goals that the business has jointly. So when that is occurring, you want to strengthen that handoff for marketing, sales, and delivery. So in AI, and if you've got AI infrastructure in your business or you're looking to build more of it, one of the great applications, like I talked about earlier, is taking these qualitative analyses to scale. So what's the quality signals of a great call? So we take those same calls and we'll work with the client and say, what would a good phone call look like? What does a good lead look like? And what do we want to measure against? And so we'll come up with a criteria, and you can see here's an example of call feedback. So now when you've got these transcripts, you can run feedback and coaching off those transcripts as well as scoring. So AI can summarize what did the buyer care about, what flags and objections occurred, is there better talk track and other things. So for here, this is one that we ran for a client. The discovery could have been better. So in this, what's the application for? He learned it's a radiation field, but only because the customer volunteered it. So our team answering the phone was being very passive. We should have been doing more discovery. The prospect opened the door. We didn't go through it. You see pricing discussions that are occurring, follow-ups that we missed. That's one of the things we see the most. The prospect says, great, I'll send you an email. And we say, okay, versus us taking control, getting the email, and we're sending the email so that we remain in control of the buying process. So there's a lot you can learn from this insight under what's happening, the quality, and tying it back to the various channels. So this is what it looks like, kind of in the system. Here's another Bing lead. We used to just look at what calls were the longest as a leading indicator for quality, which is a terrible way. The biggest waste of times are also the longest calls. So you can see here all the transcripts in here. And then below, this is where AI can do the coaching. So you can paste in the transcript. You can build agents that can automatically get this and put it into dashboards that can give your customer service leaders feedback, your sales leaders feedback. You use this jointly in those sales ops marketing meetings to score not only call volume, but what's related to it. And then also what are the pain points and things that the customers in the market is actually articulating. So you can see here it's running a score, pulling it, giving feedback for the different folks that answered. Really cool tools. This used to be all manual labor. These are the kinds of things that are now available to small to medium businesses, where I think AI is giving the small to medium business a huge advantage to be able to compete like an enterprise. This is really where a lot of that work is getting done. I think AI is a really cool tool that we're seeing more and more of our clients use to basically hard code viewpoints from ops, from sales leadership, marketing leadership, coming up with a set of standards and then being able to apply it in different places of the business to understand how well they're doing against those soft details that really make or break things. Here's another example. This is from a client where we're working with their ops team on basically capacity planning. So they have some inventory that they keep in-house, but then they also go out and supplement outside inventory to compete for certain RFPs. Here it is. And so the way that occurs is the business leads will go out and get these different quotes coming in. And the quotes are always laid out in these crazy formats. They're all unique and they're all in their inbox, which is not very helpful. So at the end of the quarter, when they want to look and say, well, what did we drive leads for that asked for materials that we don't typically stock that we had to outsource? Like, that's a great question that is kind of at the heart of what we're trying to talk about today, is all three of those impacting each other. Marketing's driving in things, sales is closing stuff, ops is having to balance in-house inventory with augmentation from outside, and then they want to do an analysis on that. Historically, that means random emails with different PDFs locked in their inbox that you can't really mobilize. So AI, again, is very good at this type of work. So here's an example of a quote they get. It's been redacted for privacy, 15-week lead time. They're buying some mesh here. In particular, this mesh is 1,100 square feet for $44,000, and it's made up of about 67 different sizes and dimensions and quantities. So, we're able to build an agent that can take a look at those PDFs and then essentially run an analysis against it to organize it. And you can then do this at scale, save this into a database, and help make sense of this noise that could then come back and impact marketing, sales, and ops. You may make a shift in either direction. So here's the key details: tolerances, lead time. It's automatically breaking down all of the line items on that quote, um, into a table here. And then it's going to give a little summary. They love price per square foot, so we made it do that calculation automatically, terms and freight included. And then you can convert this into all sorts of different things. We'll convert this here in a second to a CSV file so that it can be saved in a database and then can be used later for inventory planning. Or you can go back upstream and say, guys, we're consistently getting leads for stuff that we don't have, and we need to look at those transcripts and the other elements to say, well, why are we getting these requests? What could we change in our keywords, our targeting, and otherwise to maybe change that or start stalking it? So that's an example. Last thing here is really kind of the growing through customer continuity, and then we'll end with a little bit of a roadmap that hopefully take some takeaways for you all to act on maybe what's speaking to you the most today. So growing through customer continuity, this is your customers are your owned audience. This is one of the most under leveraged groups that we see in most businesses that aren't utilizing email automation to facilitate a great customer experience. So we have mapped out here kind of the life cycle that we often use as a roadmap to kind of get a baseline in. But it's everything from when someone contacts you that first time in the business, submit an RFQ. What do they get from your business? Do they get a welcome? We call it a welcome series. So it could be a drip of 3 to 4 emails that we're going to drop to them over the next month, talking about different things about your business, capabilities. Maybe it's testimonials, like other things that may be useful as you enter, again, a long consideration circle. Maybe it's when you deliver the quote, you want to fire off a different kind of thank you email, or you want to follow up some different nurturing and automation to help stay in mind once the quote's delivered. Maybe it's once the quote's viewed, depending on the software that you're using, or maybe it's after approval or during the project itself. Maybe there's key milestones we'll work with our clients on with their ERP system where they're marking progression on a project, and we need to be firing off updates and automations out of those systems that are already collecting that data to the customer. So they don't have they stay informed. You don't have to spend additional time and labor on your team to stay organized, and you can keep them updated through, again, scaling these types of systems, shipping updates. Then you think about advanced segmentation. This all starts with data. So working a lot with customers, maybe it's ops that helps take a lead on that. Who's some of the most profitable customers? They're doing the right work that you want to grow with. What do their behaviors look like? How do you cross-sell, upsell, or message to those groups? Or how do you look at similar organizations that have that kind of potential to tag them, segment them inside of your data so that you can run these kinds of cross-sell or maybe win-back campaigns? We do a lot of that too, or folks that quietly quit buying or the orders dried up a year or 2 years ago. How do you start re-engaging those dormant clients? So you think about the strategic work that maybe your business grew on in the past, or that is most aligned with who you're trying to acquire right now and spending all that money on marketing and sales. They could be in your ecosystem already, and simply automating and getting a new workflow out to them could be one of the great levers right in front of you to actually scale and get going again. Email becomes one of the highest returns on investment. People are the most expensive the first time they become a customer. So staying in front of them, growing with them, thinking about key messages and touch points is critical. Increasing that lifetime value. Email is a big way that gets done. And again, you guys probably already know this from the statistics and the study that we did as well. 25 times harder to acquire a new customer than retain a current one. So email, SMS, texting, certain applications, that's been a great fit for VIP type touch points and other things. Could be a good fit in your business. This is highly under leveraged. There's a really cool way to kind of deploy this and scale personalization and outreach. All right. So the last thing here, this is the final takeaway. So if each one of these subjects, as you probably already can tell, could be a whole, discussion in and of itself. So just depending on where you're at in your business, here's some of the things that we would recommend. First is channel mix and timing, like we opened with. If you've got certain goals for the business or ops, like, where are you going to find these people? Where are you spending money currently? Where do you capture that demand? List them and rank them by return and basically timeliness. AI and LLM discovery. So if you don't have a handle yet on even baseline data, how much traffic you generate, do you guys get leads at all from AI and LLMs yet? If so, where and which ones? Benchmarking and just getting your head around that is critical. Next 5 years, I can't even imagine what we're going to see as far as buyer behaviors and changes there. Lead quality. Lead quality is everything. And lead quality is a joint metric defined by sales, marketing, and operations. So if you're a leader in any of those departments, maybe a business owner, bringing your teams together, how do we define this? Coming up with that articulation jointly. And then AI is a great way to then apply that standard of quality at scale. And that's what's really exciting about this work. It hasn't really been available in the future or in the past as much. Website trust. Take your website, run it through that Be Smart method. Do you show up and talk about the things that you want to grow with and places you're trying to be strategic? If not, what are those gaps? That's a big way that you could be holding yourself back. Attribution and measurement. Everything that you measure can be improved. That's what we're talking about with some of these tools. Lead quality, attribution to know, did I get it from a Bing ad? Did it come from ChatGPT? Did it come from Google? Did I get it from LinkedIn? You have to be able to answer those questions so you know where to invest or maybe reallocate funds. AI for sales execution, using it to help standardize responses, analyze quotes. We've got clients where RFPs that they're responding to, they're able to actually put some of that into an AI knowledge base and upload RFQs and get answers about capabilities that are more accurate. So that helps increase sales quality and ops alignment. And then email lifecycle. How do you drive that second order, increase the lifetime value? Those kinds of things. So email is a huge category in and of itself, but a major opportunity for a lot of our clients. So there's my email. If you want a copy of the presentation, or if you're looking at your screen, you can also shoot that QR code. There's a little form. You can just drop it in. I'll send you this. And obviously, if there's any questions or a follow-up that you would love just to kind of explore this or go deeper, we'd love to make ourselves available for it. So with that, Brad, will turn the floor over.
Excellent. Wow. Great presentation. So much information to cover in such a short time. You did a great job. But we do have some time for for questions. We got 7 or 8 minutes. So fire away at Josh. Use that Q&A panel, and I'll forward your questions over to Josh here. We do have one already that came in. Excuse me. So with AI search and all the channels working together, Josh, how do you even begin to prioritize and know how to actually turn your marketing into revenue and not just visibility alone?
Yeah. So, I think it really comes down to that initial benchmarking. So if you don't, it starts with analytics. So if you will implement first an analytics standard that can help measure volume, but then can also give you that qualitative insight, that's where you can actually start to separate some of the noise from the quality signals that you're looking for. So I would say it starts with just that foundation. Once you get the data, then you can interpret value, no value, worth paying attention to, not, and then use that same standard on, well, what's a winnable business look like that we actually want to? Where does that scoring? And then spend your time and efforts where that's occurring.
So you're not just generating leads, but you're actually attracting the right opportunities at the right time.
That's right. We have turned off some campaigns that generate on paper the most leads, quote unquote, at the lowest cost because they all graded poorly and they wasted everybody's time. But until you have that measure, you're essentially turning off the best performing campaign on paper, which is not a wise move. So that's why it changes everything once you take the hard work to define that and apply it.
Okay. So when it comes to what manufacturers are actually promoting and what they're prepared to deliver, which may not be a match there, right? So what are the gaps there, and how do companies avoid that gap?
Yeah, so I think it's that shared definition again. It's kind of an example like we shared with the quoting and the supply that they're having to augment. So it's like when you're able to say, here's a pain, like, and that's what's kind of cool about this work. If you've got the right team culture, is everyone's got the right gripes. Sales is gonna have the right gripes on ops can't fulfill. Ops is gonna be plenty to say about what sales is selling and bringing in and so forth. So you got to bring them to the table. You got to get all that on paper, because then you can look at and say, okay, well, the frustration is having to go source this material. So now, okay, let's measure that. And then let's tie back, why are we getting those opportunities? And is that an ops challenge that we should solve? Or is it a marketing sales thing that's driving the wrong inquiries constantly? And then you can trace it back. So it's that teamwork and documentation that start it. And then it's that analytics foundation that actually allows you to trace kind of the breadcrumbs and then work on where that's occurring. And if you don't have that, you're just guessing. You don't actually have metrics to stand behind. It's all just kind of nice talk. The meeting breaks and then everyone goes and does what they always do, and the business stays stuck.
This whole industrial marketing just seems like it's such a rapidly moving target these days. And I'm guessing that some of your clients, some of the people on our webinar with us today, probably feel like they haven't even started this journey yet, and it's pretty overwhelming. Especially when you start considering the jargon that's involved and the way how quickly things are changing. What do you say to companies that are maybe overwhelmed, might not be the right word, but maybe a little intimidated about this technology that's moving in so quickly?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's completely fair. So I think that, you could take some solace in that no one's got it figured out. We're all barreling into the future together no matter what. So any progress is worth doing. So it's like, yeah, this is overwhelming. But if you've got trusted partners and consultants that can help you at least do some of the measurement and step back, then you can kind of start to measure how important, how far behind, what are those gaps, and how do we work, on these together. I think if I'm a small to medium business, which, we are ourselves and the majority of our clients are, I think AI should be very exciting. The technology should be very exciting, because this is the type of resourcing that the enterprises have always had. And they've always had the advantage over us, because they can have an army listening to calls, grading these things, implementing ERP systems that you could never staff. And so this type of technology allows you to punch above your pay grade now. It allows you to augment your team. So I think there's a lot of fear of replacement, but it's like, no, we can get a team of 10 to behave like a team of 15. So that's not replacement, that's, acceleration. And then two, you think about some of the knowledge gaps. It's similar for us. Like, I don't have any MBAs on my biz dev team, but I can get them to think like an MBA now, because I can give them those tools. I can get them to think like an engineer, or more closely too, because we can use this type of technology. We can, instill some of that in the agent code and do certain things to output and advance the critical thinking. So it's a lot. It is, but I think you should be more excited than afraid.
Yeah, I hear you. So personally, and maybe this will be our last question, but we do have some time left, so go ahead and use that Q&A panel. Just personally, I'm what should we know? What are the top 3 or 4 things we should know about generative search versus what we're so used to with SEO? Which I know that's a
No, it's a great question. So for generative search, you're basically talking about these longer form AI chats that we're now conducting. So a couple things. A typical search phrase is like 3 to 4 words. Now, when you're talking about AI conversations, you're talking about multiple sentences and long form discussions that are very precise. So it's highly personalized, very technical, and people are taking conversations to AI that they couldn't Google before. Engineering challenges, specification challenges, metallurgy issues. I mean, all sorts of really deep kind of problem solving and collaboration that you couldn't Google prior. So it's getting very precise. It is thriving upon credibility. So benchmarking where you're having success and the type of content you're potentially going to produce in the future to kind of give genuine, deeper expertise to the market is increasing in value. And we're finding that the leads that come in are highly, highly qualified because they've been very precise in the guidance that they've been given. And we're seeing too that in their comments, they're saying, hey, I'm having trouble with this thing. And I've finally been led to you essentially via ChatGPT, which we can see. So it's a deeper journey. And these personas love this technology. So it's really important here.
Do you find, to follow up with that
Yeah,
then, with an SEO successful
sure.
search, somebody's going to click on that link and go to your
Yeah,
website.
yeah.
With a generative search, do you get that same conversion to a click through to your site? Is there a different
Wish.
strategy for getting them to click through to, because there's so much information right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
mean,
So some of those screenshots earlier where it showed like ChatGPT, Copilot, etc. Those are direct clicks from links that AI gave that user that they clicked and then contacted. So that flow exists. But the larger implication still is education, that then when they're ready to go source, we're seeing a greater aptitude in the AI itself to say, help me find someone that can do that now in Houston, in Akron, et cetera. That is increasing. That's when you get the links. But
okay,
also we're seeing things like, oh, well, your challenge may be solved by this other manufacturing capability. And so when they get educated to that, then they go Google that thing and click on somebody. So we're actually seeing them feed each other, but they may become aware of a certain manufacturing capability that gives more strength or whatever, and so then they learn about that. Then they go Google it to find a business to do it. And so they actually feed each
gotcha,
other. Both are important.
gotcha. Okay.
Crazy.
All right, terrific. Well, we've reached the end of our time.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Josh, for what's really a timely and informative
Awesome.
presentation. I know we're going to be feeding a lot more of this information to our audience over the coming months and years. And thanks to all of our attendees today. We hope everyone found it to be valuable. And I know Josh's contact info was up there. So if you need more from him, go ahead and send him an email. And again, the archive of this program will be available within the next day or two on our site. So when it is ready and posted to our website, you'll get an email from us with that link, and then you can watch it again and share it with others. I know I'll be sharing it with some others even here at PMA. So again, thanks to everybody for attending. Josh, great presentation.
Appreciate y'all.
Enjoy
Thank
the rest
y'all.
of your day, and you can close your browsers now.